Um, I mean, if you want, but I know you said you didn't want to do it this go around.
No, that ain't what I said, but I
What?
okay.
Hold on a second.
I can't get Donna.
Oh shoot. I look all right. I'm not gonna turn the light on.
Y'all see, I cut all my hair off for the
All
summer.
right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here on CAG Chat tonight. I am joined by my co-hosts Tanya Wakefield and Levon Reedy Thomas, and of course, I am Sherman Hardy. Derek Holmesy and Donna are not joining us tonight, but we are pressing forward. We have a wonderful episode tonight where we are going to discuss some of the issues facing Prince George's County. First, we're going to take a dive into the issue with the fire department and staffing issues and the conditions that they are enduring right now to make sure that we are safe here in this county as first responders. Then we're also going to pass it over to Tanya, who is going to uh, be discussing ranked choice voting, something that may interest the county, considering how our elections just turned out most recently. So thank you all for joining us, and I am going to go ahead and pass it over to Levon. Levon, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. We're not going to do open mic tonight, just because, and we'll revisit that at a later show. So we're going to just jump right in. We have with us tonight President Grant Walker, firefighter from Prince George's County's fire department. No, we're not going to restart update right now. Okay. And we welcome you, Mr. Walker, and we appreciate your service and the service of your members. And I was doing a little bit of reading, as I shared with you in pre-show. I am the proud daughter of a retired DC firefighter. So firefighting is very endeared to me. I have a lot of respect. My dad served, as you said, when the city was in tumultuous times, when crack, drugs, prostitution, gun violence, he has seen it all. Metro crashing, the plane hitting the Wilson Bridge. He went to the Metro. He was upset that he didn't get sent to the Wilson Bridge, but he had enough of his exciting experiences. And so with that in mind, we came to Prince George's County, my family, from DC in 1979. And we lived right outside of the line of the town of Capitol Heights. So we were not in an incorporated area. And my father, there was a fire on Old Central Avenue, one of the old warehouses, I guess. And he went down and took coffee and stuff to the firefighters. And the building pretty much burned out. And I believe that was a volunteer call, because if I'm not mistaken, Capitol Heights had a volunteer fire department. Not sure if it still does. But he was in conflict about the way the fire was addressed. And so that was my introduction to volunteers versus professionals. And so as I was, kind of preparing for this conversation, which we're going to let you have the floor, I read a story by WTOP that I thought was one of the best summaries of what's happening with our fire department. Full disclosure, I also worked 8 years in the Baker administration. And so I'm well aware of all of the efforts that have been made to build up our fire services. Sometimes I feel like we miss community conversations on fire and correction also being a part of public safety, and people get really focused on policing. I know that with all of the development that happens, as I was reading in the story, that, we need more firehouses, but we also need staff. And we have a lot of veterans who are retiring, who are working overtime. We have a problem with, or challenges with pay incentives. and so things of that nature, which are not atypical to a jurisdiction. But what may be part of the challenge, and you can also address this, is who is applying for the fire services? Are they able to get through the training?
Well, LaVon, let's give Grant an opportunity, before you jump to the questions, to kind of introduce himself and also go and let us know what's happening in around our county.
Okay, well, let me just finish my
Mhm.
flow. And so with that being said, you also produced a report on the fire department, which I did read, but it was done with a Black background, so printing it out was a little challenging, and I didn't have time to copy and paste it. But also, let's highlight some of what you found in your reporting, and however you wanted to direct the conversation. Let's go.
Sure. Well, thank you for that introduction. For those at home watching, my name is Grant Walker. I am the president of the Prince George County Professional Firefighters and Paramedics Association. I do hold the rank of firefighter paramedic lieutenant in Prince George County's Fire and EMS department. I started my career roughly 20 years ago as a volunteer in our county in College Park while I was attending the University of Maryland. I have a degree in fire science. It's a Bachelor of Science. I do have a paramedic licensure, as is required by Prince George's County for all of our fire officers. I am a graduate of the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program, and I sit on the State Occupational Safety and Health Board through MOSH, and I am also the legislative chair for the Professional Firefighters of Maryland. So many hats. Spent a lot of time advocating for firefighters, not only here in Prince George's County, but also statewide. We've been pretty successful at pushing for cancer presumption protections, workplace protections, traditional union kind of bucket of issues work. Our organizations really push forward on that. And, I took over as president about 16 months ago, back in January of last year. Over from my predecessor. And one of the first things that we started doing is pushing for a data-driven evaluation on Prince George's County's response standard. For a very long time, for roughly about 5 years, Prince George's County has really relied on mandatory overtime to staff its fire department. And that's staffing it to a level that is far below where neighboring jurisdictions are at. We expect our firefighters to come into work on a normal schedule, and then, at 9 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock in the morning, we tell them, hey, by the way, you either have to come back in, 2 days from now, or we're not letting you go home for another 12 hours. And in temporary times and temporary measures, that's an effective way to ensure that there's at least some safe staffing on fire trucks over any period of time that's, significant, anything more than 2 or 3 months, it really becomes burdensome on the workplace. It starts ruining marriages. It involves individuals not able to be home for their spouses, their loved ones, or even for our single firefighters to have that really effective life-work balance becomes really challenging when they take the word essential employee and twist it to mean essentially you're owned by the county. That's not how any government should run. It's not how you get safe and effective firefighting force, and it's really become very difficult. On top of that, Prince George's County was already well behind the 8 ball, and Ms. LaVon, you know this from your time in the Baker administration. There was a lot of progress that was made during his 8 years in office, and COVID hit, and most of that progress stalled. There was a lot of progress in kind of righting the neglect that existed for the first 40 years of the county government. And it's really since stalled. And a lot of it can be attributed to poor hiring practices, not modernization of hiring practices. You mentioned the challenge of low starting pays. To fix problems like this, you need to have an all hands approach where everybody is on the same page pushing forward. And so when we got our staffing report, it showed some really stark contrasts from our neighboring jurisdictions. The first place that you want to talk about is the NFPA standard for safe staffing of fire trucks. The bare minimum you should really have on a fire truck is 4 personnel. Now, Prince George's County has made a lot of progress towards that goal, and I'm hopeful that in the next 2 years, we're going to get to a place where at least if you have a fire truck coming out of a firehouse that's staffed by our members, you'll have 4 personnel. We do have an agreement with the county on that. However, that's been delayed a couple of years because of the hiring practices in the county. And so the question becomes is how many more times will we kick the can down the road, knowing that even when we get to 4-person staffing on one piece of apparatus, Prince George's County does something that no other jurisdiction of our size and call volume does, and it's called cross-staffing. So I'll give you an example. So a firehouse like Glendale Station 18 has an engine and a truck and a rescue squad. And when a call goes out, they take the first available unit that's dispatched on that call, leaving 2 fire trucks behind to respond on that call, or to not respond, because we don't have the personnel for it. Now, if you were to go over the district line into DC, your father would be aware of this, or into Montgomery County, Baltimore City, they staff their engines and their ladder trucks. And so what that ends up doing is it puts an overburden on the units that are running calls. It slows the response times because you don't have multiple units running the calls. And then you end up with units coming from farther away, pulling them out of those communities for the next potential call. And so, our response study showed from 2019 to 2023 that our call volume increased by 10%. But not only did that increase happen, it also increased our response times by 16%. And when we've raised these issues, we're met with the same line of, well, we're in line with everybody else in neighboring jurisdictions. And I don't believe that to be true. Governments don't just keep additional people around for the sake of having bigger staffs. The reality is that Prince George's County is doing twice the amount of work of somewhere like Anne Arundel County with the same amount of people. Typically Prince George's County on a normal day has roughly 230 firefighters on the floor of its fire department. If you were to go to Montgomery County, they have over 300. If you go to DC, they have over 400. And so, while I'd love to believe that Prince George's County, I'm very proud of the people I get to represent. They are exceptional firefighters and paramedics and EMTs. But unless I'm wrong, I don't think that they've learned how to bend time and space to their will. And the laws of physics still apply here in Prince George's County. And we have significant challenges here.
Well, thank you. I want to ask you about the response time. There was some conversation I think I heard. I don't know if it was including Prince George's Police and the fire department or just one or the other. But there was some conversation going around about response times not being realistic, that maybe we should get rid of them. What are some of the challenges that you all face with your response times beyond the staffing? What else do you have to take into consideration when you are responding to an emergency?
Sure. So the response time standard, the NFPA 1710, which is what our response study is based on, takes into account a number of different factors. It takes into account the population density. It also takes into account the size of the structure that you're responding on. It takes into account how big that structure is and what time frame it should take, not only the first engine to get on scene, but also the full complement of firefighting force that's needed to extinguish that fire in a safe manner. And so it takes all these things into account. Now, what our response study showed is that on average, so that is taking into account all of our responses over that period of time, that 5-year period, on average, Prince George's County was getting there in 9.5 minutes from dispatch. Now, that doesn't factor in the time it took for 911 to answer the phone call and then to put it into the computer and get our units dispatched. We have an excellent dispatch center, and they do a very good job for us. Obviously, no system is without its challenges. We do have some challenges with the way that some of our call types are dispatched. However, 9.5 minutes is the average, which means that there are times where our response times are far exceeding 9.5 minutes. There are also times where our response times are less than 9.5 minutes. But if you dig into the numbers and you dig into the report that we put out, there's only one jurisdiction in Prince George's County, one firehouse, that gets anywhere close to only 50% of the time meeting the national benchmark, and that's in College Park. You know, the reality is that that's not success. 32% of the time hitting the national benchmark for response isn't success. Now, I don't believe that Prince George's County can just flip a switch and fix this problem. You know, the reality is that this problem didn't happen overnight. But what we're not seeing is significant, meaningful progress on fixing the problem. What we're seeing is our members not only don't have the vacancies filled that exist in our fire department, they're also being asked to do way more with the less resource that exists here in comparison to our neighboring jurisdictions. To give you perspective, Anne Arundel County has roughly the same amount of firefighters on the floor as us, and they run less than 100,000 calls a year. Prince George's County is running 183,000 calls in a year. That puts us in the top 15 for busiest fire departments in the country. We're busier than the city of San Francisco. You know, the reality is, though, is that we're the only one that staffs our fire department this way. And it's our job to ensure that there are enough people showing up on your emergency, not only to make sure you're safe and you are either rescued, your home is safely extinguished, but that our firefighters have the resources they need so that they can go home to their families at the end of a shift. You know, the number one thing that we see in line of duty death reports by, NIOSH is that low staffing numbers are a major contributing factor to why firefighters die at fires.
Mm.
And so,
Wow.
The reality is that Prince George's County has 45 firehouses, which is roughly the same amount of firehouses that existed when it chartered its government 50 years ago.
Wow.
But our population has tripled. Our call volume has increased by 347%. And yet the services have not kept up with those numbers. And so, I don't know when it happened. I don't know when the decision was to not get to a point where we were meeting the peer departments around us. But other than DC and Baltimore, we're the busiest fire department. DC and Baltimore are just over 200,000 calls a year, and we're at 183,000 calls a year with no look on slowing down. And so
oh, go ahead.
And so when you drive down 301 and you see these massive complexes of townhomes and single family homes, you drive into the Westphalia area, you go into Laurel with all their development, and you go, man, we're already behind the 8 ball. We're not even filling the vacancies we have. And then we have significant understaffing issues, even if you had filled those numbers, and it looks like a huge mountain that we have to climb.
So Sherman wants to ask a question. So I'll let Sherman ask because I don't know what his questions are, and then I have a couple, and then maybe Tanya, do you have a question? And then we'll roll. I'll roll back.
Yeah, we'll see.
Go ahead, Sherman.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do have a couple of questions because emergency response is near and dear to my heart. I used to dispatch for the Florida Highway Patrol, but I also, was a military police officer. So I do get first responders and understanding how fire and EMS is integral to response to even incidents where sometimes you aren't necessarily needed, but you do need to be on standby. I guess, and also emergency manager, through education and working at FEMA, and this what makes me concerned because we're so close to the nation's capital, and a sea burn attack or any other incident that could exasperate our resources, and we don't think down the line, like we didn't think with COVID that we would have a major incident like that. My question is, how does that play into emergency response? Because obviously you have to be training, and it sounds like you guys are already fatigued from having to work your normal shift. So how do you all factor into a large mass casualty response as such, knowing that you're understaffed like this?
I mean, it's a challenge. Look, the one thing I can say about the people that I work with and the people that I represent is part of the reason that we're in this situation is our members will find a way no matter what. With your history and background, that first responders are problem solvers, and they're going to find a way to make the problem better. But in a mass casualty situation, our resources are going to be taxed. This system is not nearly as redundant as it should be for as busy as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Even on a normal day, we are at our limit for the amount of ambulances that are available, or we've run out of ambulances. We've had injured firefighters on fire grounds that we've needed an ambulance for, and we were out of ambulances. And so if that's what we look like on a normal day, what happens when, let's say, there's some sort of mass casualty at the National Harbor or Northwest Stadium or the University of Maryland? We have a lot of large target hazards in Prince George's County that, look, the population of College Park swells during the day when everyone is at school. And those are real challenges. Now, I will tell you that we do a very good job of planning for those issues, but that also means a lot of resources from neighboring jurisdictions will be pulled into our jurisdiction to help deal with that. We are not nearly as self-sustainable as we probably should be for our size. And, we're taxed daily on just normal call volume, let alone some sort of mass casualty incident. Now, we work very well with our neighboring partners. The Council of Governments in the DC metro area does a really good job of ensuring that there is resources spaced across the region, and we do plan for that. But we are not redundant enough.
And that takes time as well.
100%.
You have to stand yourself up for a certain amount of time before you're able to get backfill and resources and stand up the ICP and stuff like that. So, it's very. And I do want to ask about recruiting, because I know that was an issue with you all as well. The county had a big push to hire as many firemen as they could. Unfortunately, the numbers weren't as strong as we would hope. Is it the application process is arduous, or is it just not enough qualified candidates? What is going on with that portion?
So I will start with saying that we have zero control over the hiring process as a union. It's one of the few areas that our contract really doesn't touch. While we can make suggestions, are either take it or leave it. At the end of the day, the county administration is who handles hiring.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I would like to see a more robust recruitment effort. I believe that there's not enough emphasis on recruiting returning veterans who are coming out of the military. I don't believe that we have enough recruiting efforts that are going to our local colleges. But that's not for a lack of trying. I will say that our recruitment team is very small. And a lot of that has to do with, you can't pull people out of a response system to go do recruiting when you already don't have enough people in the response system. And so when you are taxed in almost every environment, pouring more people into the system that might fix the problem puts a tax on the other side that was already at its limit. And so, the reality is that we have to be more nimble in this generational space because we're still recruiting, we're still hiring roughly the same way we were 20 years ago. Post 9/11, we had 5,000 to 6,000 people applying for our fire department on the regular. And in turn, we could be really choosy. But what's happening is our neighboring jurisdictions are out all the time. They are able to get people through their hiring process faster. And, quite frankly, bad press hurts the recruitability of people. I've had those conversations with the fire chief I don't like putting bad press and kind of a negative image on our fire department because quite frankly, I love this fire department. I got hired by the federal government out of college because Prince George's County wasn't hiring. And as soon as I could get a job here, I came back.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go
Finish.
ahead.
So can you be a little more clear about the recruiting process? You said that the administration handles that. And then would it be possible to implement some type of retirement succession program where your seasoned firefighters maybe go into recruitment for 2 years before they take their bow? Or just because to me it seems like if you're overwhelmed by the physicality and the stress of it, then maybe, but you're not ready to stop working, that would be an option. Can you talk a little more about it?
Sure. So we actually have what's known as a deferred retirement option plan or a drop plan. And that's a function of our pension that actually keeps people around a little longer than they would have normally retired. And so what individuals do is they enter into that drop, and it's a way to keep them on our roles and keep them working in the fire department where they normally would have retired. And the challenge is that, in 1999, we hired CRS 29, which was one of our largest recruit schools in history, if not the largest. And we put together roughly 250 people in a 2.5-year period that came into this fire department. Well, in 2019, those people became retirement eligible. Now, they could have stayed for much longer, but the failure to plan for that large attrition number is how we got here. And we were planning on our side, but again, we don't have any control on hiring. And so for years, Prince George's County did what's known as attrition hiring, where they only hired the bare minimum to keep where they were supposed to be at. But when you threw in COVID and they delayed that attrition hiring for about 1.5 years, we are extremely behind the 8 ball. I mean, the fire chief was in council for the budget hearings saying that they would get to the high water mark of where our allocated strength is 5 years from now. And that number was based on what they needed in 2024. And so for us to say, okay, so do our members have to endure this crippling mandatory overtime for another 5 years? That doesn't sound like a solution to me. That sounds like waving the white flag.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a question from the chat. They want us to know, with recruiting, is the compensation higher in neighboring jurisdictions? They said they know a few firefighters that moved to Baltimore over Prince George's County.
Yeah, so the starting pay is low here in Prince George's County, very similar to the police and a lot of other neighboring jurisdictions. I just saw an announcement today that paramedics in Charles County even are starting at $63,000 a year.
Oh.
And so, we expect our firefighters to be firefighters and EMTs to start, and a lot of them become paramedics. But
so you have to go through buildings on fire for $60,000 or less than $60,000?
Yes, our starting pay today is $54,000.
Oh.
Wow.
Tanya, did you have any questions?
Let me correct that. Our starting pay actually today is $55,485. We just implemented a COLA for our starting pay. However, that still puts us well behind where our neighboring jurisdictions are for starting pay.
Okay.
But yes.
Yeah, I did have a question because it seems like you had said a lot of the practices from 20 plus years ago, we're still operating off of those. So I guess, is there a strategic plan that we have for the fire department that is looked at every 3 to 5 years to see that we are moving in the right direction?
Well, so I will tell you that the county has paid for some consultants to look at our response times. That staffing measure that I was talking about, that 5-year staffing plan, is the first time that a proposal has gone across to the council that, plans on what their hiring numbers are going to be. But the reality is that our members can't wait another 5 years, because 5 years from now, the county will have realized building data centers. They'll have figured out how they're going to repopulate the Six Flags population. They're going to figure out what they'll be doing with Northwest Stadium as the Commanders leave. The reality is that time doesn't stop.
Right.
And we're already 20 years behind where we probably should be from a development standpoint. And we keep pushing the can down the road. The fire chief said in a budget hearing that the Westphalia firehouse was being delayed because while they could build a firehouse, they don't have the personnel to fit it or personnel to fill it. And, that's very true. We don't even staff the 45 firehouses that the county currently has.
How many?
But
45.
I guess what really doesn't kind of sounds confusing to me. So we're only looking at what projected. You said they're looking at your current staffing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? And then based on that, they're determining what based on what other data?
What they think reasonably they can hire.
So it's not about population to the number of personnel that are staffed in station. It's just
so.
And tell me what should we be looking at in order to do
To catch us
proper
up.
forecasting?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of different factors you should be looking at. One, population density, right?
Mhm.
So we know that the more people living in an area, more likely to have more calls, right?
Right.
We talk about in the county, inside the Beltway versus outside the Beltway is busier or slower. Now,
Mhm.
that was true maybe 10 years ago. Now, there are very few slow firehouses in Prince George's County. And the reality is that we have roughly the same amount of firehouses today that we did when this county was chartered. However, we don't staff all those firehouses. And the ones that we do staff, we don't staff all the apparatus in those firehouses.
Wow.
When you start coupling all these things together, it's not just that response times are long. It's not just that there's not enough people on each fire truck that's going out. It's not just that there's not enough fire trucks or ambulances going out. It's that all of those things are combined. And by the way, we have a number of vacancies that have not been filled, and we've been going on 5 years for this problem.
Wow.
Wow.
So are you able to address the long-standing, I don't want to use a controversial word, so I'll just say the long-standing conversation about career fire services and volunteer fire services?
Sure. So I think I'm actually uniquely qualified to have that conversation as someone who lived at a firehouse in Prince George's County when I started, and someone who's made my career in Prince George's County. Look, the county changes over time. To give you kind of some perspective, our organization was chartered before the county government was chartered. And the reason our organization was chartered coming up on 60 years next April was because volunteer corporations were paying people to make sure their ambulances and their fire trucks got out the door during the day. And what happened is those people were either members of those volunteer corporations or they were working for multiple corporations, and there was a competitive war on schedule and pay that they all got together and said, look, we're going to charter a union to improve our pay and our working conditions, mainly their schedule. Next year, we'll hit our 60th year. And the reality is that in that time frame, our people have been working alongside volunteers. But what I want to say is that we're advocating for safe staffing that is reliable every single day. It takes a lot for someone, one, to go on their own time, to go get classes. And then at the end of a long workday, to go, hey, I'm going to the firehouse. To tell their wife, their spouse, their significant other, their friends, hey, I'm going to the firehouse. There's nothing wrong with that. But Prince George's County expects its taxpayers to pay a significant amount of money for their property taxes and the services they get here. And the safety of not only our citizens, but also the firefighters that are responding can't be predicated on whether or not someone got off work on time or someone was willing to sacrifice their time with their friends and family to come and get a fire truck out. What we're saying is pay your taxes, but if you want a reliable fire and EMS response, you've got to go do it yourself.
So are there any legal ramifications for the challenges that we're facing being understaffed? Are there fines by maybe the feds? Like, who's the oversight of fire services?
So that's an interesting question. So last year, the Occupational Safety Health Administration was actually pushing forward on a change to the OSHA laws to put in mandates for a lot of these staffing and response standards that already exist in the fire service. And I'll actually say this is Prince George's County leans on the NFPA standards a lot when it comes to a lot of the things that we do here, whether it's our breathing apparatus, our personal protective equipment. The NFPA is regarded as the national standard for anything fire service. But when you start to get into the realm of staffing and response times, that's when you frequently see the conversation of, well, that's not realistic. We can't do that. And it's not that it's not realistic, but it's hard. It's hard to make sure that your fire department is staffed effectively. It is hard to push forward. And look, no one here is saying that overnight should Prince George's County correct, this legacy issue. But we've gone 5 years without any real meaningful progress. And now we're saying we're going to wait another 5 years just to get to the staffing complement that when you look at the neighboring jurisdictions and you look at nationally where we're at in comparison to, real peers, we're not talking about, just, neighboring jurisdictions that don't run nearly the same amount of call volume as us. We're talking about places like, Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Antonio, Dallas. We are in that conversation, but we are not treating our fire department like they are in that same conversation.
I have a question. I'm not sure if you answered Lavon's question though. But okay, so I know you have your police chief, but within the administration, under what agency is the oversight to make sure that they're looking at the fire department, they're planning for any expansions that are needed for the fire department, they're planning for any professional development that needs to happen for any of the any personnel that are in the fire department? Where does that lie?
So, ultimately we do have a fire chief that's in charge of our fire and EMS department. There's a public safety director that is in charge of all of public safety response. And then it falls underneath of the county executive.
But as far as looking at, so that would be the public safety director that would actually be.
Are you asking who has accountability over this issue?
Yes, who should be looking at, to make sure that we are not 20 years behind at this point, nothing's being done. So who holds that accountability?
Well, I would say that the administration, and you would also hope that your county council is holding some accountability there. I will say this, the county council in their wisdom gave us 150 personnel last year's budget. It's not just that you need personnel faster to stem the bleeding. We're in arguably a worse situation this summer than we were last summer when the fire department decided to come out of 4 firehouses. And so then you look and you go, well, if we're doing the same thing year after year, asking our members to just hold on a little longer, for what? For next summer where we do the same thing again?
I guess what I'm hearing though is it sounds like it's a fragmented process because there's so many people holding a piece of the accountability, and it doesn't sound like there's no centralized.
Well, I would say that the problem comes, as he said when he opened, that under one administration, you have a lot of effort being made to repair 40 years, right? And then the
True,
next
but to
administration,
get to my point, that it shouldn't matter the administration when you
but it
have
does,
no, but listen to what I'm saying. It should not matter
right?
because it changes with the administration when there is a centralized um, agency, individual, whoever that overall coordinates with all the other people to make sure all this happens.
But
So
those
it sounds like we don't have that in place.
But those people are appointed and hired based on who's in the leadership at the county executive office. So your fire chief changes, your director of the fire, of public safety
And that
changes.
makes sense that that changes, but I'm just saying that that career person that does not change, they other than through retirement, so that there's coordination across across our government agency and across our two, between the council and the administration. So, because it just seems like it's fragmented and there's a lack of coordination that's happening because we don't have a centralized place where where the buck stops here.
So I guess what I would ask as a follow-up to what Tanya is saying, Mr. Walker, is when you're doing union negotiations, how much of the conversation about what has worked with a previous administration do you want to go forward with, and how much you wasn't working? Like, what does that conversation look like?
Well,
As
I'd say
much
that,
as you can share.
sure. I mean, so what I would say is that, there's only so much that we can bargain for in negotiations. The reality is that we've been pushing for staffing for our entire existence as an organization. But the ebb and flow of county budgets, the ebb and flow of priorities from administration to administration. Look, Prince George's County's fire department is very well funded right now in comparison to the past. But the over reliance on things like overtime puts us in a position where we haven't staffed this fire department. I mean, last year when I testified in front of council, the $38 million they were projecting for overtime was roughly 444 firefighters, salary plus fringe. It's not that we can't afford a fire department. It's that we are not pushing to go forward. We are currently just staying in place. We didn't add any units during that time frame where our call volume increased 10%. Because we didn't hire people to not only fit the attrition, but also to put more units in place for those increased call volumes.
So I have two questions. Well, I have 4, but I'll stick with the 2 for now. Sherman, well, I don't know, I have 4. Sherman was talking about the, I think you mentioned the cadet program or the recruiting program. But don't we have a cadet program for high schoolers? Because unlike the police department, 18-year-olds can apply for the fire department, correct?
Actually, now it's actually 17. So the fire department did just launch a new cadet hiring program that will allow them to apply while they're still in high school. Look, it takes an exceptional high schooler to be able to have the maturity level and the academic rigor to be able to be a firefighter. I think a lot of people think that, when you look at the pop culture, that we've got a bunch of guys that just sit in the gym and pump iron and then the bells go off and they run down the street. But, part of the reason why you compensate firefighters the way you do is they're a highly educated skill set. I'll give you, for instance, we have a class for people that are going to drive the engine, and it's called pumps. Well, what they call that program in college is fluid dynamics. The reality is that when our career firefighters graduate the academy, they are armed with a numerous amounts of college credits that they can directly transfer into a degree program like fire science, emergency management. You have one of the most well-educated firefighting forces here in Prince George's County, and for a very long time, we've led the way on that.
Fire
But that
inspectors.
all, what's that?
Fire inspectors.
Yeah, I mean, look, all you have to do is take a trip over to Montgomery County and enter their fire inspector, office, their public fire inspections office. It's all run by retirees from Prince George's County because of the experience and the education that they got here. The reality is that Prince George's County has a very educated firefighting force here. But what that also means is that if you're going to put them into EMT class and you're going to put them into firefighter 1, 2, hazmat and hazmat tech, they have to be able to graduate from college level courses. Because we do have a challenge sometimes with hiring individuals that can't deal with the academic rigor that is our industry. Because it is a life and death industry, and there is a science behind how you fight fire, and there is a medicine behind how you treat illnesses and injuries. And so, I think for some time that individuals may have looked at our cadet program as a behavioral mechanism in the school system. I don't believe that to be true anymore. I know that the schools have hired some of our retirees, or at least one of our retirees, to help guide individuals into our cadet program. And, look, that program is decent, but it can only do so much. I mean, 10 people every graduating year, we still have to make up for that 60, 70, 80 firefighters that we need to be hiring. And it can't just be that we go to health fairs. It can't just be that we go to, college recruiting events. We have to be an all-inclusive. And right now, there's simply not enough people in our fire department to do that. But the cadet program has netted some really good individuals for us. One of my shop stewards was a cadet at one point, and so I helped him, made sure that he got hired. He said he showed up to my firehouse when I was working, and I said, "Hey, have you applied for us?" So I hadn't thought about it. I said, "Well, you should, because this is the greatest job in the world, and we love working here." And you know what? He's now a paramedic, and I'm sure someday he'll promote. And we have a lot of opportunity here in Prince George's County. But it can't just be limited here in Prince George's County. We are challenged because we are competing with DC. We are competing with Montgomery County. We are competing with Baltimore City, Frederick, Anne Arundel. You have some really great fire departments in the region. I personally happen to think that Prince George's County is the best one. But we are competing against the rest of them. And a lot of people want to work for busy fire departments, and to see us struggling this way is really disheartening.
Well, 17-year-olds in the school system, I just want to say, go ahead and get y'all to $54,000 a year. That's much better than less than that working at McDonald's. So get a good education and join the fire department. I don't know what the ladder is now, but at least you can start off with 54.
Well, they've got a pretty great union working on a great ladder for them. So
okay, good.
So, Grant, can I ask a question? What is different with these other counties where you're saying that it seems like they are operating smoother?
I think they're more agile. One of the challenges that we worked with council to address is, and I actually wrote a paper on this for my executive fire officer program, was pre-employment cannabis screenings, specific to asking whether or not someone had utilized cannabis prior to hiring. We're still kicking people out of our process for cannabis. I'm going to be honest. We've moved far past that in the state of Maryland, where we have medicinal and recreational. The voters have clearly, said their piece. Almost 70% of Maryland voters approved the recreational cannabis piece. It's a fact that we're kicking people out of hiring processes for either asking them whether or not they've used cannabis in the prior year, or for what they've said is dishonesty about their cannabis usage, is quite frankly a little disheartening, especially in our community. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's a really regressive perspective. And quite frankly, there's no data that shows that it makes your workplaces any safer. And now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that someone should be utilizing cannabis to come to work. Like that's don't misunderstand that. But
I can answer that question for
well,
you. Because I was part of a task force work study with OSHA and it was labor and also the police department. It was in Baltimore, and what they wanted to do was test and see the effects of cannabis usage on us, and over time. So they monitored us, they watched us get high, watch us consume, and then they had a series of tests and stuff like that. And what they determined was, yeah, there's a period of time when you first consume that you should not be handling anything of hard stuff you need a hard hat for, pretty much. But they said after hour or a couple of hours you were good to go. So it's not, and they were really testing to see um if you were impaired. That's really what you should be looking for, because there are people that take other medications and still shouldn't operate, and we know that that's illegal. So I'm definitely tracking with where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a number of large fire departments, not only in their employment standards, but also in their employee standards that have completely thrown out cannabis as a thing that they test for. Pittsburgh was probably the first fire department in the nation to have an active letter of understanding with their union on utilization of cannabis off duty. And because what they were finding is that they had a number of returning veterans that were being prescribed cannabis by the VA. And in turn, they were coming to work and they were going to lose their job if they tested positive.
Right.
Now, we've got an even more unique story here in Prince George's County. Jesse McCullough passed away of occupational related cancer a number of years ago. And his wife testified in front of the state legislature this year as there was a bill to create an anti-discrimination framework for firefighters for using medicinal cannabis off duty. And what she testified to is that her husband, as he was dying of cancer that was caused by firefighting, didn't use cannabis to maintain his quality of life because he was afraid he'd show up to work, he would get drug tested, and he'd lose his job and his health care as he was fighting for his life. And that's really where the conversation is. We have to shift from a conversation where we're talking about an egg in a frying pan, and we're really talking about medicinal cannabis for usage for individuals that have ailments. I mean, look, firefighting leads to things like PTSD, back pain, sleep deprivation, a myriad of issues that are treatable with medicinal cannabis. But Prince George's County has taken a very hard line. In fact, they've gone so far as to say that we are the same as the police officers when it comes to our hiring standard. And that's just functionally not true in the state law. The state law, the MPCTC, does not include firefighters. But it's an easy way to say we don't want to deal with the issue. And so we are kneecapping ourselves in a number of areas where, look, we've had individuals that have applied to our fire department that didn't hear for 6 months in the hiring process. Now, maybe the fire department has changed that, and maybe they're making a big push and an effort. I'm hopeful that they hire another recruit school at the end of June to get to 150 people. But that effort should have been given at the beginning of this fiscal year. It should have been given last year to prevent us coming out of firehouses. It should have been given 2 years ago to prevent, copious amounts of mandatory overtime. This isn't the first year that we've been dealing with this. This is the 4th year after the first year. And so, the question becomes is how long do firefighters in Prince George's County not only have to endure the pain and suffering of mandatory overtime because of the lack of urgency in hiring and filling our vacancies, and then when are we going to address the fact that they're doing twice the amount of work as their colleagues with half the amount of resource?
So last question, and it's kind of a combination question. Well, one more question. So you mentioned that we have more fires than other jurisdictions, but we're comparable in size. What type of fires are you seeing, and what safety practices can you impart to our listeners and viewers?
So look, we run a lot of fires in single family homes. We do have a lot of single family homes here in Prince George's County. Kitchen fires are always a very common reason for a fire in a home. Unattended burning items. You don't put out your cigarette all the way. You don't put out, your campfire all the way. The reality is that there's a myriad of things that are causing fires in homes. Overloading of extension cords. Look, everybody has a million devices now. You got your cell phone, your tablet, your AirPods, and they plug all the chargers into the same extension cord because they wanted it next to their bed. And then that extension cord was bought on Temu or, it wasn't UL rated, and then it overloads and catches fire. One of the things that we've been okay and not super unfortunate with is some of these, scooters and battery powered transit devices, but you shouldn't keep those in your house. You shouldn't charge those in your house. We've seen a number of times, not only here, but in neighboring jurisdictions where those have caused significant home fires, and they happen quickly. That thermal runaway that happens in batteries is really dangerous, and you shouldn't be keeping those things in your home. But there's a lot of resources online through the NFPA and also the Red Cross that teaches you how to take care of your home and make sure that it is fire safe. Fire safety is not just 1 month a year, it is 12 months out of the year. And I am sure that if you wanted your local firehouse to come out and talk to your students, your middle school students, your high school students, your seniors, we have a great office in the fire department that does public outreach, but your local firehouse loves to come and talk to them as well.
And my last question would be, we're an advocacy group. We want accountability by our government, but we also want our residents to be accountable for the things that they should be supporting. And so what would be your call to action? I like the fact that you said invite the fire team out to your community, but what can we as a community do to support your needs, your actions?
Well, look, we have an incoming county executive that should be sworn in a couple of weeks. And I would ask that not only through your county council members, but through your county executive, your delegates, your senators. Governor Moore has actually spoken specifically about our mandatory overtime issue. He talked last year at an IFF legislative conference about the challenge here and needing to fix it. And so, the question I have is, what more advocacy does the community and our organization have to do to get people to listen? Because, the reality is that too often the fire service and the fire department, because of our go-getter attitude and willingness to make do with what we have, ends up being the forgotten service in public safety. There has to be a recommitment to getting your fire department to a place where it is the fire department that the residents of Prince George's County deserve, that is respective of how busy this jurisdiction is, and is responsive to the large size of this county. I mean, we're nearly 500 square miles. We have urban, suburban, and rural tiers, and each of those tiers have different requirements and needs for fire and EMS response, and none of them should be neglected.
Really quick question before you, because I know LaVon said it's the last one, but say somebody like me who might be a little nervous, about response time and my house burning down, because there are differences between fires like grease fires, electrical fires, and stuff like that, and what you should pour on it. Definitely water isn't always the best option. Which fire extinguisher should I get that just would kind of help me out till you get there?
Well, it depends. So, look, you can go to your local hardware store, somewhere like an Ace or a Home Depot or a Lowe's. And if you look on the back, it's got different classifications of extinguishers on the back. And it will tell you what those are most likely to be used for. You want a general purpose fire extinguisher for your home, like in a kitchen. But what I would say is, don't fight the fire in your own home. The most important thing is for you to get out and stay out. At the end of the day, We're trained professionals to handle fires, and while using an extinguisher in your home may seem like a good solution at the time, fires double in size every 30 seconds. And so any delay in response, any delay in calling 911, any delay in you getting out of the house can lead to serious injury or death. And so we always recommend that instead of trying to put the fire out in your house, make sure that everybody gets out of the house and call 911 and find a safe place to be, and let us get there and put the fire out. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you have enough firefighters in every firehouse in Prince George's County responding in a timely manner.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And let's not forget, they need to put those batteries in their smoke
Yes, ma'am.
Because I hear it during your Zoom meetings, your team meetings too.
Well, listen, the law changed a couple years ago. Get yourself one of the 10-year battery smoke detectors. Replace your smoke detectors with one of those 10 years. They shouldn't chirp. And when they do start chirping, you just throw them away and put a new one up.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good thing to know. My house is way too old. I need to get the 10-year ones. All right. Well, thank you so much to firefighter Grant Walker, president of IAFF 1619. That's a significant number right there.
Yes, ma'am.
And we appreciate your service and the service of all of your comrades.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great night. God bless.
You too.
All right, you too.
Okay, y'all. I'm going to tell y'all. Here's my feeling on this, and it's not it's not our firefighters. There's from an organizational perspective, this is fragmented. This process is just fragmented. You're reporting. There needs to be a single point of contact that coordinates this effort and looks at the things that Grant was talking about. And I just tried to do some searching to find out, what do we have in this county? And having the county council have a piece, the county executive have a piece, there has to be a liaison between both branches of government to coordinate this effort so that we have proper staffing, proper forecasting, because we're building all these houses and apartments and all this other housing, but we're not doing what needs to be done to keep our people safe.
So my thought was, because I heard what you were saying and I knew where you were going with it, but again, it is fragmented because of how we are structured. But and he did answer when he said OSHA, but he didn't go as far as I wanted him to go.
OSHA what? But we have a local.
No, it's the feds. They set the mandates, the standards for everybody. So,
but that's setting the standards. I'm talking about coordinating locally.
I understand. But my point of asking him was they're being negligent. But I didn't want to use the word negligent with him because I wanted to see where he was going to go with it. He addressed it, but he did not address what the penalties could end up being. So because he stayed away from it, I left it alone. To me, if I had a fire at my house and it was because the fire department was delayed
he said 30 seconds, it could double.
I'd be suing the county. So that's
exactly.
That's where I was hoping he might.
Well, he can't tell the people to sue the county now, LaVon.
No, I know.
but I think it was hard for him to answer it because it's so fragmented. You have the public safety person, you have the county council, you have the county executive. There is no central coordination where there's a liaison that goes across both branches of government, and then even within branches of government, if there are any specific offices that they have to coordinate through, they're just out there dangling.
So one of the areas that I would offer would be the Office of Human Resource Management. Now, that agency is also led by an appointee as well. What I would like to see, and maybe this is something that the Office of Ethics and Accountability could address, Mr. Todd Turner, is that we know that we have a deficit in our staffing. So where is the legal mandate that we need to make this a priority no matter who is in office? If that were to be the case, it could possibly come out, be done through OHRM. And I don't care who's in office. Our priority, as you said, Tanya, is to have a continuum and get to the 5 years that we're already behind in staffing up our department.
Well, we actually were more, and when I say a central spot, it would not be a appointed position, because an appointed position may mean that that person does not have the skill set. It has to be a career position that's
Right.
coordinating this effort.
Right.
Somebody that has that safety background, because my son is a fireman, so if I knew that they were doing stuff like that that's happening here with my son, oh,
Right. And
it's
so,
just not
yeah,
said.
I'm not
Mommy wouldn't
saying
be
that
happy.
I'm just saying that the host agency should be. Now, he mentioned your senators and your delegates. Maybe we need the state. I mean, it's nice for Governor Moore to address it, but when is Governor Moore going to put something in place that says to Prince George's County, get this done? Like, is there some legislation? We can legislate the school
Well, I
system.
mean, we're a sovereign county. Now, we can't at one point say we're sovereign, you can't dictate to us, and then come back and say, now dictate.
No,
I mean, they can set.
I'm not saying
Mhm.
dictate. I'm saying we need to maybe think outside of the box and come up with some legislation that will encourage what is needed. I mean, if we can legislate the school system in and out every single session, surely there has to be something that we can take into
Yeah,
consideration.
but the school system is under the state. That's the difference. The school
Okay,
system is
well,
under the state.
it's just a
But
it's
but I
just a
get your
suggestion.
point. I get your point. Something definitely needs to be done because it is just too fragmented, and the potential of people being harmed or killed is too great right now. So that something definitely needs to be done where there's
Yeah.
some centralized position that coordinates across every agency, every branch of government, so that I just can't imagine we do not we're basing staffing on what did he I can't even remember what he said. It was that we're basing it on, I guess, the number of calls that we get. Or no, if we can do it. Yeah. If we can really staff that number of people. Not
Mhm.
so much on the real safety issues. It's just
They just
mind-boggling.
haven't been
But
faced with the right situation. There was a fire across Route 4 in the townhomes, Melwood Park, I think it's called. And I don't know what the cause of it was. I haven't followed up, but 3 townhouses were just smithereens. I mean, it was, I haven't seen a fire like that in a long time. Not that I go around looking at fire sites, but that one was, I mean, it was just the whole front of the houses are gone, right? And so I know that there's a conversation about us having more fires now. He didn't really say that. He just said we have the most
He
in the
said more
area.
calls. He said
Right,
we're starting to get more calls. We went up
right,
16%.
right. But
right.
he didn't present it as a red flag or anything like that. That's what made me ask him about, what is he seeing as the fires? And I thought he offered some really good insight. Y'all cannot be plugging up your phone and laying it on the bed. That's one of the things I hate.
Yeah, I have to
I
stop that
notice
too.
my phone gets hot sometimes, and I'm like, So, we just have to be careful. I know y'all like those Alphabet products, but I heard they catch fire more than the other ones. So,
Mm,
but anyway, that was a really good segment.
yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we got to start digging more into the government because
And also
it seems
updating
like,
your sockets in the home too, because that can definitely cause, you know,
oh yeah.
that with a whole bunch of plugs. It's definitely not
Remember when we
safe.
used to have fire prevention week? Do they still do that in schools?
Hmm.
Where you do the picture and someone gets to win? I never won. My picture's
Child,
not
I
up
don't
there.
know. I ain't saying no more what don't happen in schools. I said people don't get to go on field trips, and everybody blew up my post. Come on, we go on field trips. We go on field trips. Okay.
You know what?
Nope.
But it's
Yeah,
not like how we went on field trips.
Thank you,
right.
Tanya.
It
Well,
was
let's
it's definitely not like how we went on field trips.
definitely. Well, next up, and once again, we definitely thank Grant Walker for coming on. But next up, we're going to pass it over to Tanya. She's going to talk about ranked choice voting. This is an issue that
Okay.
is definitely near and dear to our hearts, considering how democracy has been playing out with the one party system here in Prince George's County. And not that we have an issue with, the parties, it's more so of making sure that we have the best candidate moving forward and not having some of the mishaps like we did recently. But go ahead, Tanya. Go ahead and take it away. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, I am a fan of this ranked choice voting. And let me tell you why. Um, yes, yes, yes. I used to talk a lot with the late Sylvester Vaughn when we were doing um canvassing for elections. And he was a Republican. And he made a lot of sense. And I remember I was thinking I was going to change my party and become a Republican. And then Donald Trump joined the Republican Party. And I said, and that was it. So, then I thought about being an independent. And then I realized if I was an independent, I couldn't vote in the primaries. And so that brings us to this ranked choice voting. So basically, how does this work? And I know DC, I don't know if anybody, I didn't get a chance to check. So I'm not sure if anybody found out if that passed in DC, because I know that had gone to referendum in the District of Columbia. But basically, we have this two-party system. And with this two-party system, it sometimes it makes it difficult, to really choose the best candidate. And especially because our politics have become so tribal now. We're blue states, red states, purple states, all of this. And I think that the ranked choice voting will take away all of that and help even the field so that you can be any party. And I think it would make candidates to really have to really earn your vote, because you would have to really tell them what you're going to do other than say vote Democrat, vote Republican, vote blue, vote red. You don't you have to tell people what you're going to do. So I think it would make candidates more accountable. So basically, how this system works
Hold on,
is
Tanya, just so you know, it did pass in DC.
it did awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to make a move. Um, okay, so this is basically how it
You
works.
should see my look I just gave you.
I saw. So basically, you have your candidates, and you will vote on your candidate so that you can pick first choice, second choice, third choice, and so on. And so it doesn't matter if it's by party that you're voting. You're just voting on who you say is the best candidate for you. It will break that barrier of where independents and other, if you're not a Democrat or you're not a Republican, you cannot be a part of the primary election. So it will do away with this two-party system, which I think is long overdue. So you'll vote for your candidate. So if a candidate gets a majority of the 50% of the votes, then that candidate becomes the winner. But I believe that, and correct me, because I know Alaska does this, and I remember watching theirs. And then if there's not that, then basically you start knocking off people based on who had the lowest vote. So then the lowest vote getters, they go out, and I think it's the top three that actually is how Alaska does theirs. So then the top three will move forward to the next round of voting. And so let's say that your candidate lost. Your vote can now go to the three candidates that are left. So you can look and say, okay, well, my candidate didn't win. So let's say, like, if we were doing this in Prince George's County, if we had did this for the county executive race. So the top three, if we had did ranked choice voting, we know that Aisha Braveboy was a top vote getter. Rashawn Baker was, and do y'all remember who the other candidate was? I can't remember. So let's say it was Braveboy, Baker, and another candidate. They can go forward but nobody got 50%. They would go forward and then we would vote again. So let's say that was Jolene. Okay, so we had Jolene, Baker, and Braveboy. And let's say none of them got 50%. Well, we go to the next round of voting. And let's say that my candidate
I have
didn't make
a video if you want me to play what you're explaining.
Oh, you got a video? Okay,
Yeah.
well, let me get to one with it.
Go ahead.
And then you show the video. And if my candidate didn't make that top three, then I can say, you know what? I think the next best person is this person. And so I can go ahead and move my votes to that next person. And it doesn't matter what the party is. You're voting the best people. And I just think that will take out this tribal element of our politics that I think is so detrimental right now, where the person with the most prettiest idiot ballot in Prince George's County ends up winning. So yeah, I call them idiot ballots. So and I think that because of that is, if DC could do it, we could do it too. So let me go ahead and let Sherman show his video. And let me see if it's the one I would have
Pick your
shown.
favorite color.
The ranked choice voting way.
Instead of voting for just one color, you get to rank your top three.
Well, purple is the best, but if I can't have purple, I want blue. And if neither of those wins, I guess I can live with orange.
Now, let's count up everybody's votes.
Under ranked choice voting rules, it's not enough just to get the most votes. You need a majority.
More than 50% of the votes.
Purple's ahead, but it has only 7 votes.
It needs at least 11 to win.
So we eliminate the color in last place.
Sorry, Orange fans, we're going to your second choice.
2 more for green.
1 for purple.
But no color has 11 votes yet.
Still no majority.
Bye-bye,
blue.
1 more for purple.
4 for green.
And we have a winner.
The ranked choice voting way.
I just think that is so much better than what we are doing right now. I mean, I can be an independent. I can finally be an independent.
Yeah, so some of the areas that have the ranked choice voting, Oregon, Washington, California,
Yeah, Alaska.
Alaska, Michigan. I think that's Indiana.
So someone wanted to know exactly how is ranked choice voting? How does it differ from a runoff?
Go ahead.
How does it differ?
Yes, how does it differ from a runoff voting?
Well, you do. Your runoff is basically. Well, you go ahead.
So a runoff would be an additional election. It wouldn't happen at the same time because obviously if both party or none of the parties got the minimum amount, then they would say, okay, well, the last two or whoever, we're going to redo it, and that's how you do the runoff. But when it pertains to ranked choice, all of that done is at
It's
one time.
automatic. Right.
The process just keep going and keep going until somebody prevails and has the most votes. But it's done so the person with the least amount of votes don't actually win. It's someone who is wanted by a
The
majority per
majority.
se. Because
Exactly.
often it doesn't happen that way when votes are split, or when it's just to me it's a better process because everybody has input
Yep.
to say, okay, well, this wasn't my first choice, but if I couldn't have my second, at least I'm not getting the fifth choice. I can still get my second,
Right.
if that makes sense.
I think that is really the people have spoken. All this fake stuff you hear people getting on with their winning speeches. The people have spoken. No, they haven't, because we're so
Mm-mm.
tribal. We're so tribal. No, the people haven't spoken. It is the folks that you have
Tanya,
fooled with, huh?
I'm catching your subliminals.
Well, it is the folks you have fooled with your idiot ballots. Those are the votes that have won. So it's not the same.
And not only
It's
that,
not the same.
the turnout, and I hope we can find somebody who has broken down or can break down the votes over the last 3 or 4 elections. Because if you got less than 50% of your registered voters voting, that's not a mandate. I don't
It's
care
not a
which way you
mandate.
cut it. I don't care if you get
Or if you won
70,
by 1%.
right. I don't care if you get 75% of the registered vote, of the cast vote, rather. It's still not a mandate because you didn't get 50% of the registered voters, the people who could vote to
Exactly.
participate. A no vote is a vote. It speaks loudly. And we have got to figure out how to help people understand that this ain't high school homecoming court. And it's okay. You want to stay home during the general election because you just know that the Democrat is going to win in Prince George's County. Fine. But here's the way you look at the general election when it's between a Democrat and a Republican in the county. You look at the turnout. If people are really adamant and excited about putting
Enthused.
your name up for that seat, you should have a great turnout. Now, I haven't seen what the turnout has been on this election yesterday, the special election, but the vibe was low. The energy seemed kind of low to me. And we've been getting reports from one precinct that, they didn't get a whole lot of people from day to day in the early voting. And so we have to start analyzing the turnout and
Yeah,
what
because I made it there around like 7-ish the day of at the Sports and Learning Complex. And I was like number 740 something, 740,
and it's a
Look, there
waste
was
of
so
our
many people
money.
sitting around doing nothing when I went to Bach Road. I mean, I was just like, you talk too loud, you can hear your echo. That's
But
just how
but
that's how empty it was.
how much money are we spending on these mail-in ballots? I mean, in my
well,
house,
there was
I'm
a
gonna be
law.
transparent. In my house, there's 6 votes. Only 2 got cast because people, I was like, I'm not babysitting y'all to vote this go round.
Yeah.
And so my thing is, stop doing mail-in ballots if people don't request them, because it's a waste. People don't use them. They still want to show up and put their little mark in the booth. That's fine. But I bet if you got a tax benefit from casting your vote, we would get more people voting.
Yeah. And there was a legislation that was they attempted to pass. I believe it was Councilman Denoga, and it was kind of to remove the general election. They wanted to just do the primary and call it a day. And there was definitely some dissent from most of the council members about that. But the only heartburn that I have with it is it sets, it sets it for now into, until it's changed. And things can change over time, but right now I do understand why, because pretty much the election is done in the primaries. I mean, you didn't see one of the candidates out there. I'm trying to. You didn't see Aisha out there campaigning for the general election. So it's not like anybody is out there actually doing the work per se. Nobody. You don't have a challenger. And well,
Mm-hmm.
you have a challenger, a serious candidate per se, but they don't have the exposure. They don't have, we don't have a strong Republican Party here, so it's a one party system.
Right.
Well,
and that's the problem with this two-party voting. You're the red, blue, or purple. But I just looked at the unofficial number. So only 21,000. A total of 23,894 people cast votes. I'm sorry, 31,208 people cast votes for county-wide election.
That's less than the primaries. Am I correct? You have to look
that
that
was
up.
The other point I was gonna make. If you can't get the votes in the general from at least the people who voted for you in the primary, that's another sign that it was just this one is better than that one. It was not a competitive process of elimination. It was just preference. And the other point I want to make about our fiscal cost of these races is we don't need polls open on election day. We don't need extra sites for these little pitiful special elections.
Let's LaVon,
boxes are.
LaVon.
Yeah.
Did you just say we don't need polls on election day?
Not for a special election, not for this one. Regular, every 4 years, yes, you can do the local polling places, but we did not need to staff up other polling
not all of them
sites.
were not all of them were open though, because I went to my original and it was nobody there, and I should have looked at the flyer because it was on Bach Road. But I feel like they're just doing like the major centers. They're not like opening all of them, and I don't want anybody to say
that was still a lot of money spent for
but we knew that
the one that reported to us. They had 53 people for the whole day, and you're paying some folks $500 a day, $400 a day, $300 a day.
Times 20 people.
That's a lot of money that we're spending. So in the primaries, there was a total of 94.
That's why people vote for somebody to move over to a lateral.
So look, 94,537 votes were in the primary, and now we get 31,208.
How many did Aisha get it at 90-something thousand?
Of the 90,000, she got 43,942 votes. This time she got 27,886. Now this is the unofficial numbers right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a lot of money. A lot of money.
If your people are diehard,
that's barely a district voting, isn't it?
Right. If they die hard,
well, even the districts were low.
They should be showing up.
In the primary, District 5, let's see, the winner was Sheila Adams Stafford. I'm sorry.
Can't even get it out.
Okay, she got 5,126 votes in the primary. There was a total of 10,344 in the primary.
That's pitiful.
So in the general, there was a total of 2,818 votes, where she got 2,606. Okay, so 2,606 people voted to have a thief become their. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I didn't say it. The report said it. You voted to have a thief become your representative for your council position.
I want to go ahead and update us on the grants.
give us our $36,000. They want $36,111.92 back, and we won't say nothing else about it. We will close the books. So you voted her for your council person. She stole $36,000 from kids, children, your scholars. Y'all say your scholars. She stole $36,000 from it. Ask her to pay the money back, people, please. And we won't say nothing more about it. Just pay us back our money. You got it. You got a multi-million-dollar nonprofit since Edward Burroughs has been up in there. So you got it. You got the money.
Well, don't she have to
Go ahead.
Doesn't she have to relinquish that organization now?
I would hope, you know what? See, you know what? That's another conversation we need to have for another day, because we got council people giving money to groups that they don't found it. You know, I think that it should be, you should divest yourself from these groups, but that ain't happening. Okay,
well,
Sherman, I know
they may have divested themselves legally, but not morally.
I don't think so either way, but getting back to the voting, ranked choice voting, you know what? We that will do away with this. Our politics have become too tribal, and too much of a popularity contest.
That's my soror. That's my frat. Well, what about that one right there? Well, they did such and such and such 20 years ago, so we don't like her. Huh?
Right. And I'm done with the first woman, the first Black, the youngest man. I'm done with that, guys. I'm over it, you know?
How about people quoting scriptures? I'm like, really? Really?
You know what? The Bible says the devil knows scriptures.
Yeah.
I said, I don't mean nothing.
I'm like, come on, y'all. This is profane. Stop. Just stop.
You quote scriptures, but you forge contracts, you lie on people under oath, you give false testimonies under oath. I'm talking about stuff that can be proven. So I'm gonna say it. You do all this, and then you're worse than folks like Paula White and these other, Christians who get up here and ask you for $1,000 to learn how to pray. You're worse than all of them. So
let them people get their oil and their prayer cloths. I just want to
put up our legal statement, please. You didn't put it up earlier in the show.
Right. We're not giving legal advice. But what I do want to do,
I got evidence to prove it.
Well, I just want to invite the community to an event that's coming up. There is a free crab feast that District 7 is hosting, and everybody's invited. Just go ahead and sign up with the link right there, and see you all there.
That's why we're $200 million in debt.
It's going to be an amazing time.
Y'all want to know?
My stomach is very deep when it comes to seafood. So we're gonna go into that house. But everybody
wait a minute, Sherman. Y'all want to know why we are $200 million in debt and counting, and why our credit rating has been dropped. Put that
What's
flyer
wrong with
back
people
up.
with bad credit having crabs?
Not when you paying
That's
your
when
tax.
You get them. That's when you get them.
Put that flyer back
up
there for a minute, please. Can you put that flyer back up there, please, for a minute? This is why we are in debt. Instead of our tax dollars, being used to pay down our debt, again, like I said, they got the best photos when they put on these flyers, the most beautiful smiles. But people, this is robbing you of your tax dollars.
Well, it ain't robbing me because I didn't pay for it. I'm going.
Dollars.
Not my taxes paid for it. I'm going to get a plate or two. I'm gonna bring the aluminum foil. That's right, Donna. That's what I said. Cat gotta go. Get us some crabs.
Gonna be in the house.
Oh my gosh. Well, see, that's on my birthday, and I'm not spending my birthday on that. I'm not spending my birthday on that. And I guarantee you, they're gonna be little female crabs, and y'all gonna come up there, and y'all gonna be so disappointed.
We have a comment in the section that
You know
says
they
we
gonna
need
have,
legislation to amend the ethics laws, and we really do.
you know what they're
Oh,
gonna be
We
doing? They're gonna be
do.
sitting aside their crabs for their friends. Miss Joey is on the way. Can you give me 6 crabs for Miss Joey? And then put some
They're
over
gonna
here
bring
for
the
Mother
Tupperware
Smith.
plate.
Yeah, Mother
Look, no,
Smith like
Levon, they're
3
gonna bring the
crabs.
Tupperware.
I'm gonna bring my
You know,
Tupperware.
girl, you know how
But
cousins do it. They bring Tupperware. They put that little Tupperware to the side. That's for Miss Stone. She coming.
all right, everybody. So on our last CAG episode, we spoke to you all about the grant rescissions. It was a very uh, talked about topic of discussion going around the county for a while. And of course, you know, your Citizens for Accountability and Governance. We definitely don't like to talk about it. We like to be about it. So we emailed, based upon the letter that was sent out to get a rationalization or response, to give us better insight exactly what took place, why it took place, because this was traumatic for some of these organizations. And some of the responses that we got back was, as far as the policy direction under the new administration during the council meeting held on May 14th, Council Chair Burrows clearly articulated. I don't know about the clearly part, but he articulated his
Or
intent to
articulate
implement
either.
a more equitable approach to non-departmental grants. Please, I'm trying to get through this. Under his leadership, funding will be distributed more fairly across all districts, particularly those that received little to no support in previous years. This shift reflects commitment to inclusivity and balanced community investment. Now, if this
Okay, I
doesn't
gotta say,
sound like
can I
a
say something?
go ahead.
Can I say something?
Y'all are made
That's
for
a
each
lie.
other.
No. Let me tell you, but that's a lie. Because if you look at some of that money he reallocated, they were for
Mm-hmm.
his pet projects.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, his money at the community college, his academy in District 8. Y'all look at the stuff that he reallocated. That's a lie.
That we
Those were
spoke
his
about
pet
on
projects.
the last one, because if you look at this line again, it says a more equitable approach to non-departmental grants funding. Well, what we saw was not equity, because if you recall, and unfortunately I don't have the clip to bring up, it was heavy on District 8.
Yep.
District 7 got
7.
theirs. And with equity, you don't just go ahead and say, okay, well, we're going to take from everybody else and we're going to give to we're going to make sure that we bring you up to the level where you're supposed to be. But again, what was equitable about the distribution? Like what form of
You know what?
I'm trying to
That
understand
sounds like
how is it going to
Tommy.
bring
Fairness. There was no fairness in that.
well, not even fairness, because that too. I what I'm trying to say is
That sounds like Tommy Tuberville. That sounds like a Tommy Tuberville quote.
it was not fair at all, and that's the best I can surmise it, because clearly the funds went to, and they say some of the organizations that were crying had received funds, for so many times, but the funds that were reallocated were given to some organizations for the past 3 years.
Yep.
As we have told you all. So it's not that it was unequally distributed. And so one of the other responses that we got was,
can I just say one more? It wasn't unequal. It was, there were programs that Burroughs and Arietta had put out that needed funding, and that money was reallocated to fund those projects another year. Like the $800 to anybody who wants to raise their hand a month for 2 years, that was supposed to find its
are you
own
talking about
funding
universal
stream.
basic income?
Yeah.
The second response
Just
that we
raise your
got
hand. I
was
want $800.
understanding programmatic realignment, because I want to know what exactly was programmatic realignment and fiscal priorities. So the ChatGPT response was, programmatic realignment refers to the strategic redirection of grant funding towards initiatives that align with the chair's broader vision for the county. We don't get to see what the broader vision is for the county outside of, we want equity and for the underserved communities, or not even underserved. I forgot what the whole statement was, because BS. But anyway,
Co-pilot. Because I think it's
This
hallucinating, like Copilot.
this includes prioritizing programs that benefit all communities rather than disproportionately favoring select districts. So obviously, I mean, CAG, if you all want me to explain that, I can definitely do that. But it clearly is a contradiction of what we saw. This includes
Yes.
prioritizing programs that benefit all communities equitably. Well, we saw
You went out.
in
Oh.
District 7. Oh, I went out. Can you hear me?
I thought he was
No,
just
I hear you now.
emphasizing
Okay.
all.
No, yeah, I was emphasizing all because, again, District 7 says that they're going to give this, and that's probably where the money coming from for the crab feast, because when they gave it to PG Changemakers, it said that they was going to throw functions and parties and pizza parties for teachers and community stuff and stuff like that. So possibly this is where that money is coming from, but we don't know. There was no endorsement line. We don't. It's definitely not campaign finance. Maybe it's coming out the council, but then again, where does the council get their money from? Not asking you all because y'all know, but
all I know is District 7 has padded itself. It has more money. District 7 and District 8 got more money to serve their constituents than any other council members have. They getting project money, non-D money, in local impact money, and the council members are just sitting there quietly. As I asked Council Member Hawkins the other day, what are you gonna say about this? He ain't nothing to say. He's talking about interesting perspective. But remember, y'all, he told us on his interview for running for county executive that he makes his own decisions. Don't nobody tell him what to think and say and do. But today, when I went to the grant compliance workshop, he gonna mosey in there, sit down, they shout out his name, and then he walks out. Yep, Calvin, I'm putting you on Front Street. Then he walks out. What you come in there for? If you're not coming in there to apologize to the people who were sitting there who possibly had their money rescinded in month 11 of the fiscal year for the county and month 5 for the fiscal year of their organization, then we don't need to see you up in here.
He had to show up a home room.
And I hope this was recorded to play back, because just some of what you shared, Lavon, I'm just like, this is jacked up, because we're doing things with our local nonprofit that go against federal law. And I'm just like, I'm trying to, but I want to hear it for myself.
Not just federal
I'm just
law,
like,
but our laws, because usually it takes 3 years of it being established before you get grants, and especially at the amounts that have been given.
right.
But since day one, even before they barely, was able to incorporate properly, they were getting money. They got
Look,
money.
I'm gonna tell you, some of these nonprofits are worse than welfare recipients, because that's what they are. They are worse than human welfare recipients, because, well, I'm not gonna say worse. They should not criticize anybody getting TANF benefits, because that's what they're getting. TANF benefits are tax dollars. And I hope the IRS starts looking at all of these millions that they are bringing in, because they are supposed to be getting their funding through public donations, not becoming revenue having the local government becoming your revenue stream.
Yeah,
and
your primary
their
source.
monies, exactly. So your money should be taxable. It should be taxable income, because you're sitting up here basically acting like people getting TANF benefits off the government. You almost as worse than Elon Musk with some of what you all are doing. It's the same thing.
Well,
here's the fourth response. And I'll let you go so you can talk about the grants, because I have one more. I think it's Lavon. I'll let you go take it over. All right. So and I wanted to know what could they expect for fiscal year 26, because this program was upended for 25 when it was already spoken for, essentially. So they said the fiscal 26 grant cycle will bring structural improvements to how funds are allocated. Each councilman will now have a direct role in shaping the distribution of non-deep grant funding. ensuring diverse representation and more community input, like the community input part about it. Applicants can expect a more balanced and transparent funding process, improved communications regarding grant guidelines, and greater considerations for district historically underserved. Again, these changes build on actions that are already taken to correct imbalances for 25. So it sounds like it's like a bunch of crop
BS.
because clearly
You got a
there,
picture
there
of
was
you got a picture of a stack of poop.
Can we ask them, Sherman, what historically underserved communities they've identified?
and we need to do that. Typically
Those
it
are
would
just
be
buzzwords they always use.
it
I
is
know,
because
but let them explain it.
well they're saying I guess the red line districts that was in Prince George's County, and let's not take away from that because that did happen. But right now, there's such a broad word for underserved. Everything is, underserved, based upon those zip codes. And um, some of those zip codes, I'm not all of them are like some of the wealthiest, parts of the county now, aren't they?
Right. And what's the timeline of their underserved, identifying underserved communities? Which
Yeah.
timeline? Because I know when Jack was in office, he was throwing money around like, it was raining outside. He had $6 million. You didn't even have an application. You just said, Jack, can my organization get some money?
And it says a more
produce the
balanced and
data.
transparent funding process. It also says that, there's other things that they included in that letter, what I just read, that we should be able to see that's tangible. That say, okay, well, this is the process that we're changing.
The data.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see the data. I want to see the data behind these decisions, other than your thoughts and what you dreamed and what you thought of the next day. Yeah, just let us see the data behind it.
So here is an expanded version about the whole stakeholder engagement, because I wanted to inquire about that too. If you're spending county dollars for districts, we should have some say about, what our district is facing and where some of these grants should be going. But they said every council chair is elected by their peers, council members who are in turn elected by the public. While changes in funding directly may raise concerns, it is not uncommon for such adjustments to occur with shifts in leadership. This is not the first instance of a redistribution of non-grant funding. What is unique is the case of level of resistance expressed. So they're throwing it on the organizations that have routinely received grants year after year. It's their problem, it's their fault that they're crying that their funding was stripped away by a new chair who was just installed to rescind funds from something the old chair did that was, already promised. And no grants should be counted as income until funds are officially received. Organizations previously eligible for fiscal year 25 funding had ample opportunity to apply and benefit under the prior administration. So did they have ample time? Because
he did that fast. He did all that reassessment that fast.
Here's the deal. That's some baloney.
The
bottom line is the people you get your money. It's like getting a what is it? An IOU or a promissory note. That's what your letter is. Your letter is a promissory note. And it's saying we will be funding you. Their fiscal year, the county fiscal year ends June 30th. When you notify people in October, they are rounding up their numbers for the next fiscal year starting in January. How do you tell somebody you're going to get X number of dollars and I build it into my budget, and then you tell me, 6 months in, you can't have it? That's some crap.
But not only that, when we had that discussion with our guests, those notices came from finance. So if that came from finance, that was outside of the council at that point. So what, did you go and strong arm the people in finance and threaten you were going to fire them if they didn't let you read? What you're doing is no different than what that man is doing on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And that is trying to reallocate money that has already been out there. And again, people look at what they put that money to. It is to the pet projects for your council people in District 7 and in District 8. They couldn't find the funding streams for the stuff they started in prior years, and now they've taken your tax dollars and reallocated for their pet projects.
And why they couldn't shift some of this non-D money over to the fire department? Bring us up to
remember, $464,000 to the police department. So now the police department is already being budgeted, and now the council is doing another $464,000 for some program that they're doing. We've already funded the Prince George's County Community College. Now we see another like $200,000 being funded through here.
Yep. And the thing about it is there are organizations who have never received that kind of money, and they have been doing service for 20, 30 years and delivering stuff, like just making it do what it do. And I would challenge anyone to say that certain communities were neglected, because I know under my tenure, when I did the county executives grant, we worked with the council to implement like the domestic violence funding that started. We went for federal money, we went for state money, we went for private money. We did workforce training with an organization that executive training with the organization, a philanthropy organization, to build up the nonprofits that had, experience, performance that was measurable and all of that, so that they could begin to qualify for other monies. So I know that we were building up the nonprofit sector. This is just I'm in charge move, so I'm gonna do what I want to do.
And LaVon, I also want you to talk about because you went to the meeting yesterday for the grant compliance. So before we get there, I just want the public to know that we did let you all know that Eco City Farm was in Wallaby Gates district, and the reason why they received 0 is because they cut, in Edward Burris' words, they cut the $75,000 that Councilwoman Ivy had given them, and possibly because they thought they wasn't in their district, but just because it said Riverdale on the form doesn't mean that it wasn't their district, because while it was on her Facebook post, and the reel said, "Hey, we at Eco City Farms. Look at all the great stuff they're doing." Cut $75,000.
Yeah, their office is in Riverdale.
Sounds like a doji.
Yeah, their office is in Riverdale, and they have some farming in Riverdale too. But they do Watkins Park. They also help other small farming projects. If you have a piece of land and you want to grow something, they do training for people, agricultural training to teach you how to do things. They have volunteer programs for anybody that wants to come from anywhere that you can work in. They do cohorts.
Yeah, farming in this county is a tight network, and they all try to help each other, try to find resources wherever they can, and also educate, because I'm a new farmer myself. And, while I have not worked with Eco City Farms, they're part of, the network that, I'm a part of. And if I ever said, hey, I needed advice on such and such, well, they would connect me with someone at Eco City Farms. And, so their mission is critical to our county.
Right. And they work with Oxon Hill Farm. They work with the Akakeek Foundation and the Annie Ferguson Foundation.
So are y'all saying that they didn't do their homework?
No, they did not.
Before they start making these cuts?
They just probably looked at the form and said, not in my district.
You know what?
It sounds like a federal level.
That brings me to a thought that I had, Tanya, and that is, when we start doing candidate interviews going forward, we need to ask people about some Prince George's County facts. What do they know about Prince George's County? Because we never test, or I've never been in a forum over all of these 30 years where anybody was ever asked, share something that you know about the history of Prince George's County and how it is impacting or how it has affected you today and how you want to serve. We gonna stop putting these people to the test, because if our babies got to take PG history, they need to know some PG history, because I'm just tired of people. You know, I was talking to
Well, you
somebody.
see, that's why I went and got that book. Black
Yeah.
Power
Well, you know what?
So I can learn about Prince George's.
But see, here's the problem. We have a group who is trying to saturate their people throughout the government. And so they go get them to get people to rent rooms, and then they can come in and speak very eloquently to you. And you're thinking they're all this, and they don't even live in the county. So they don't know anything about the county. All they know is about the room they rent so that they can be in the district, so that they can run for office.
So fair warning, y'all need to start doing your own citizenship research, because some of y'all need to, well, I ain't gonna make light of what's happening, but you know what I'm thinking, right? If y'all had to tell
all I'm gonna say
a fact about Prince George,
I don't believe people are making almost $100,000 a year and you renting a room in Greenbelt, Maryland. I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't believe it. Nope. You drive a nice foreign car.
And it's funny,
I
right?
don't believe it.
It's funny, they ain't send no cameras to that person's house.
No, it sure, yeah. Since y'all so worried about people in residency, y'all go check out that house in Greenbelt.
You know,
a townhouse. You and not even a house. You renting a room in a townhouse.
It may have not been on their radar, but you know.
Or they on the same team.
Well, did we have any last alibis before we go ahead and close out? Because I think we just finished our segments.
So I'm gonna talk about a little bit about the
the grants.
About the grant compliance workshop that I went to today at the Curry Building, hosted by the grants office of the county council.
We everywhere, y'all.
And I went just to be nosy for the most part. And having had a career and will anticipate continuing my career sometime soon in the nonprofit sector, I've known a lot, learned a lot, seen a lot, and done a lot. But today, in the words of someone who was sitting close to me, she said, I need my time back. There was nothing, to me, it was an effort to clean up the messiness from the rescission situation, because they wanted to talk about the non-D and the domestic violence grant processing and how you should be in compliance and your paperwork, because they had so many people, organizations that, you know, were not in, whose paperwork was out of order, and they opened it up to some auditing, I guess, questions. And so people were eliminated. Well, it sounds like a goodwill effort to justify maybe some established organizations that typically get money, and maybe they had a bad row or something in the past year and they thought they was going to get it cleaned up and they got caught. I don't know. But it was a bunch of just standard direction. It didn't tell us how the council was going to make non-D decisions. That, to me, is where the compliance hits the fan. If you got funded, that meant that you met all of the compliance standards. But then they took your money and never told you by what measurements they decided to take your money. Just because of where your address is, we felt like you were in the wrong district, so we take your funding. So I found it a little hypocritical and insulting that you gather these professional people together to tell them kind of like, why we not gonna fund you next time? Because if you don't do this, and this, you don't have any excuse. We're not giving you grace. We're not doing, and I'm not saying that you should get grace because you didn't file a form or whatever. But to me, it was a setup in the work.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Why couldn't they just send them a letter?
You know, it was they wouldn't even give us the PowerPoint. People asked for the PowerPoint. They said, no, we won't make it available. They stopped the Q&A. They said no questions will be held because we have too many registrants, attendees, and we're not going to have enough time. Well, I'm sorry, did you not properly time out your presentation in anticipation of questions? No, you didn't want people to ask questions because you didn't want to have to explain the messiness of the rescissions.
LaVon, I just put it back on the screens because this is important to what you're saying. A more balanced and transparent funding process for fiscal year 26, improve communications regarding grant guidelines. So it doesn't sound like they're being transparent or communicating properly right now on the guidelines.
No,
exactly.
All they had to do was
read
that. If they had read that statement, presented that statement right there, and then broken down what the procedure is going to be, each council member gets X number of dollars to distribute to nonprofits in there, whatever. I don't care. But don't waste people's time and insult them and tell them, well, you better be in compliance.
And council members should not be making those decisions. There should be an independent body or person that gets the council sets the overarching criteria, requirements for reporting and all that. And then there should be someone experienced in reviewing grants. And I don't think any of these council members are.
Well, who got fired?
Huh?
Who got fired?
Somebody got fired? Who got fired?
Let go.
The CAO. But wait a minute, hold up. Before we go to that.
No, not that. I'm talking about for the grants because I thought they said somebody in the process. Maybe I have to verify. Never mind.
I don't know. But the thing is, they do have qualified people doing the grant review or the management, the writing of it, and all of that stuff, right? The problem comes in with the pettiness or the pickiness or the preferences of the council members when they say, okay, well, I want X number of dollars. So they only get the ones that have been approved. They don't review hand by hand each of the applications. Now, with their special appropriations grant, which is the $100,000, their staff will review, and each council member has a different process. So that's not a cookie cutter process, which is also problematic. Some council members might say, I'm only giving up to $5,000 because I want to make sure I'm giving out a whole lot more money. Some council members send their $100,000 to the Greater Washington Community Foundation to be reviewed, for the applications to be sent to. They don't want nothing to do with it. All they get is a recommendation, and they can say yay or nay. So,
and that's what I'm saying, should be across the board.
Right. None of this has consistency. And because of the tribalness and the dictatorialships of these people, it's just gotten uglier and uglier, and I expect it to become its ugliest. And
well, you know what? Cool. You're saying ugly. It's corrupt. Let's just put it. It's corrupt.
Well,
and it needs to be. Too. It's corrupt. It's corrupt. And
the
it
sad
needs
part
to
is we
stop.
cleaned this up. We did a lot of work to clean up all of this stuff. We were accused of being unfair because some people didn't want to go through the application process. Then when we did the application process, we didn't know what we were doing when we were reading the applications. We didn't, okay, well, we're not letting outsiders come in and read it because you don't have any, you're not bonded to do any of this. It's confidential information. There's nothing to enforce security with information. We got all the applications here, the scores. You're welcome to know the scores. We didn't hide any of that stuff. And so we did a whole lot more than what had been done and a lot more than what's being done now.
And I think the scores is all, to me, is really all that the council really needs to see. They don't need to be getting all involved. But the other thing, this is, I am all for nonprofits because nonprofits working as an extension of helping government solve its social ills, I support. But when you are $200 million in debt, you have just your bond rating, your AAA rating has been downgraded. And all I hear you doing is giving money away, moving our tax dollars into unrestricted buckets of money. stuff that they did on the school board. So it's going to get worse because you got another former school board member coming on over to the council, and they have mastered taking your tax dollars and putting it in unrestricted buckets of money so they don't have to come back to the public as they start moving money around. This has got to stop. I want this council and the county executive to show us what is the plan to pay down our high debt. And I'm done with all these crab feasts, jazz fest, all this stuff. I don't care. I can go buy my own tickets to go to the Jazz Fest. There's plenty of crab feasts all over the place I can go to. I want you to pay down this debt that you ran up.
What's
and I want to see a plan
with a couple of crabs. Crabs in the bucket.
Not with my tax dollars.
No, mama.
Take out this portion.
This is
but
sheer.
The thing about it
hold on. This is sheer negligence, and it's incompetence. At this point, first you say, well, they're young. At this point, it is straight up incompetence. You keep doing deficit spending. Your checkbook, you don't got the notice of all the NFSs that you got, and you still trying to write a check on an overdrawn account. This is ridiculous, guys.
And notice nobody's holding conversations to tell us just that. You don't see nobody posting, we know it's troubled times, but we're doing it. Nobody wants to have those conversations.
Nope. They put on their nice blue suits.
And
but wait a minute. They put on their nice blue suits, got their pretty smiles, and pop it on a poster and sucker you in to make you think, oh, it's all going to be all right while the debt keeps going up. This is ridiculous.
Look.
There is a thing called calling in on the debt. There are the things where people are going to start saying, you know what? We can't trust you anymore. You don't get any more line of credit. You don't get anything else because you have shown you're not responsible.
Yeah. Well, we definitely have that conversation coming up the next CAG on the 18th. We were going to talk about the downgrade by Moody's for the county's credit, but unfortunately our guest isn't able to make it tonight, so we're going to try to get them to come on the 18th so that we can have that conversation. Also, we do hope to have a robust discussion about the proposed toll roads on 495 and also a transportation update. Derek's going to bring that to us. And also, we hope to have a conversation with developers, actually, if we can get one to come on. But we did have one of the individuals from the association, the Builders Association, who's going to join us. So it'll be a very good show coming up, hopefully, if it all works out. But we're definitely going to talk about that bond rating. We were planning for it tonight, but it didn't happen. But we're going to let y'all have it.
Higher interest rates. Look, higher interest rates.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm doing what y'all be doing. So,
no, that just reminds me of Mama Joyce from Housewives of Atlanta. She'd be like, can I just say something?
Oh, gosh. Oh, don't compare me to that lady. Okay, so I've been trying to be a little more engaging on social media, going to other people's pages and reading the comments and making the responses. And I just have a couple of things to say about the art of debate and public discussion. First of all, you all do not chat it up with us enough. You have your preferences of discussions, and that's good, but let's expand ourselves. I posted about what are you reading twice, and I got some suggestions the first time, and I don't think anybody's responded to the recent one. So when people say that Black people don't read, y'all are not making that argument.
Ask them what they're watching. Maybe that'll just start a conversation.
TV podcast. I post about the 1619 project. People don't engage. In order for Citizens for Accountability and Governance to grow, to get deeper, to be broader, to reach higher and farther, we need you all to up your game. Now, that leads me to saying this. You don't have to insult people's opinions to make a point, telling people that that's nonsense. You must not know. I don't know y'all, and y'all don't know me. I got 30 years in this game. How dare you? I would never. And I know that I'm a professional communications person, so I give you some slack. But once you tell me who I am and what I'm not, I'm done with you. I don't have any more conversation with you because you've now left the point of the discussion. So we have to be accountable to each other. We have to be accountable to our missions. We have to, if we're going to ask people to be accountable for our services, right? And so the last thing I want to say about social media and CAG is don't tell me another time that we are negative.
Oh,
Save it.
I'm so sick of that. Or haters.
We are not negative. We are not haters. We are not resentful. We are not jealous. We are not anything of those things. We are just passionate and committed to better quality of life and governance. Nobody else is on here telling you all about the corruption. We don't have local media to cover the corruption. When we did have local media covering the corruption, people said they only coming after the Black people. They only want to talk about us because we Black. Well, now the Black people are still corrupt and nobody's talking about it and they're getting away with it.
I don't care what y'all do, just don't do it with my money.
Right, and we no, and so we
that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
We're trying to elevate the conversation and to talk about what's not being talked about, to expose what's not being seen or that's being covered up. And if you think that aligning yourself because these are your peers, either by age or identity or whatever your connection is, if you think that what they're doing is okay because you get a benefit from it, God bless you. I ain't out here in these streets calling out your name and saying what your game is. So leave us alone. You don't have to watch us. You don't have to comment with us. You don't have to follow us. You can block us. But stop saying we're negative because we are not. We are doing good work and we are people of integrity. And I'm not going to keep turning a blind eye and I'm not going to give a deaf ear. If you don't like what we're doing, check yourself and ask yourself, why don't you like what we're doing? It's enough bubblegums and butterflies out here for the rest for y'all to do.
That's what I say. If you came here for, I posted that when everybody started joining us, you know, for during election time. If you came for niceties and pleasantries, you came to the wrong place. Because that's not what we do. You can go to, I'm not going to name some of the organizations, that'll be messy, but you can go to those other organizations. They will welcome you with open arms and you might see me there too. But on this platform, good or bad, we talking about governance because that's really what the crux of it is.
If we say somebody's name, it's not because we don't like what they look like, what they got on, how they talk. We're talking about what they have done in the name of public service. Mm-hmm. So don't put your hand on the Bible, the Quran, the encyclopedia, or the dictionary if you don't want people to talk about your shortcomings in office. Thank you.
Right.
And on that note,
yeah, I'm sorry. I know. Yeah, no. I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the graduates that are graduating high school.
Yes.
I have my first grandchild.
I've been enjoying
my first
the pictures.
Granddaughter, my oldest. Yeah, she's graduating next
we had somebody graduate tonight too, right?
Yes, my nephew graduated from yeah, well, you may have saw me looking up because I was watching him walk across the stage from Anne Arundel High School in Anne Arundel County. So Christopher Edwards Jr., congratulations!
Yes,
and then for my sister Val, her second grandchild, KK, who has just she has had a journey. I would love for us to do a story with sickle cell patients
Yes, I have
because
somebody who
she
can come
did
on
the
for a nonprofit. Remember the Levon?
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'm
she
gonna
never
see if
follow up with me.
No,
well,
we spoke, but yeah.
yeah, I think that because my niece actually went through the transplant and it was successful, and she just graduated high school and she is attending Howard. So I'm very
Okay,
proud,
All
KK.
right.
cool.
Congratulations, graduating from Prince George's County School System. So, but yeah, for all the graduates,
Mhm.
congratulations.
Yeah, I don't have kids, so I live vicariously through a lot of my friends and family and their kids, and I just get so excited, especially the ones that that I follow who do the arts and who out there running track and different stuff, and I try to support whichever I can until I get my own little crumb snatches. I'll probably adopt or do respite, but in a couple of years. But
I
everybody in
be
CAG, we
wanting to
are
make
not going to
it happen
belabor,
for him.
huh?
It makes me every year when I see the graduates, I be like, I want to go back to school, and then it goes away.
I don't know about going back to school, but I do want to go back to stay in the child's place so I don't have responsibilities. But CAG, thank you guys so much for hanging us with this far. We truly appreciate it. You guys are great. You guys are wonderful. Keep lifting us up. And also, if you see something, say something. Good night and take care.